Welcome to the Activity Time Podcast, hosted by the SLE marketing
Welcome
team.
back, Dons. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Activity Time. I'm Emilio.
And I'm Macy.
And we're the SLE marketing team.
In the previous episode, we had a juicy discussion about the recent Netflix documentary, Operation Varsity Blues, with two USF admission counselors, Terrell Clark and Justin McMeer. If you have not listened to this episode yet, then we highly encourage you to check it out to learn more about the admission scandal and more.
Today, we thought we'd change things up a bit since the semester is slowly coming to an end. But with the next semester approaching, we thought it would be great to bring in two USF housing experts to tell us about what housing will look like and what to expect. Please welcome Tori and Yuan. Woo.
Welcome.
Hello, hello. Please introduce yourselves.
Go for it, Yuan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuan Zhou. My English pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am one of the residence director here with SHARE. And this is actually my third year, wrapping up my third year.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Tori Bruce. I use he, him pronouns. I am the senior director for SHARE, and I've been at USF for just a little over 4 years now.
Nice. Thank you both for coming on. It's really nice to always connect, with faculty from USF. So it's really exciting to have you both on. So I guess we can start with, something that's kind of been very relevant lately. We currently had an incident in an on-campus residence hall. I believe it was Loyola Village, where, someone had left a news out. And so, there's a lot of implications with that, of course. So I just wanted to give a space for you all to respond to, how is the department handling the situation, dealing with anti-Blackness, and moving forward, how is the department going to create a safe environment for all students?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a conversation piece that is happening. It's in our present moment. The first thing I would say, and all of us at the university would say, is that acts of hate and racism have no place in our community. Whether it's anti-Black racism, hate, whether it's anti-Asian racism or hate, any form of hate or racism is not welcome in our community. We have policies and procedures in place that support our student safety and hold those accountable that perpetuate or promote these acts. And where we're at right now within SHARE is, working to support our community. It's small right now. The on-campus population is just about 200 students. We would normally house about 2,200 in regular years, but with the addition of our new residence hall next year, it'll be about 2,800. But even though our population is small, we have a community that is hurting. And, our goal is in the immediate term, let the process play out to investigate and hold students accountable for acts of hate. Support our community, both our staff that is working to support our students, but also our students living in our residential communities. And then the last part of this is the ongoing safety of our students. The landscape is changing with what we're doing on campus, and what next year is going to look like. We're having a lot of conversations around, okay, what will it look like to safely open next year? And that's predominantly been rooted in COVID-related stuff. But people's safety aren't just tied to COVID or health. They're tied to their identities. They're tied to their emotional well-being. And so we will be having ongoing conversations within SHARE about how do we promote safety in our community? How do we provide resources to our students who have been impacted by instances such as these, maybe not even in our community, but around us. So, it's on the forefront of our mind that our student safety is the utmost of concern.
Yeah, I think it's a balance for sure, right? Of what, right? I think folks know that investigation is happening, right? And so, but what's the balance of that, and also community that are hurting. And so I think appreciate seeing I think campus partners around to holding spaces, and also us thinking about where can we also partner with those folks maybe to kind of create that like processing space for not just our, I think like staff level, like we have had some of those, but also for our residents too. I think that next year, we're still trying to finalize some of the work that we're doing, right? Like this year is only, 200 some students, as Tori have said, but next semester, right, we're hoping to open. The campus is going to be more lively, but also thinking about how, how those folks coming, more populations being on campus, what would that look like for, more students, but also, bringing students back onto campus, but into the community as well, making sure that, we're not, promoting any of these behaviors, not just on our campus, but also in our immediate, neighborhoods and city as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is we will have more students on campus next year. That means more energy, but that also means more impact when these types of situations arise. So yeah, that's our biggest goal, is to just be ready for next year, and ready to support people back to campus, to our housing, to make this campus vibrant again, but doing so in a healthy and safe way that supports everybody.
Well said, and thank you both again for speaking up regarding this issue, since with it being very relevant and kind of like what you were saying about preparing for the next coming academic year. Can you tell us a little bit about your position? What made you want to get involved with the university, and like what does a typical day of work life look for you during this remote period?
Well, there hasn't been anything typical for about 379 days, but who's counting, really? Who's counting? Yeah, so as the senior director, I have the honor and privilege, and it truly is an honor and privilege to lead our department. As it stands right now, student housing and residential education is our area. The student housing piece is the facilities, the dorms, the assignments, the billing, the desks, customer service and support. And then our residential education side, where Yuan sits, is that student care and support, engaging them in community, both within the community in the building, but also within USF and our Bay Area neighborhood, right? We're going through some transitions as we move into next year. The residential education piece will be moving over to the Dean of Students office under Dr. Shannon Gary, and really tying that community engagement and that community enrichment piece of residential education within the Dean of Students area. And then student housing will stay as its separate entity, managing the facilities, the billing, our front desks, the 24/7 safety, security, customer service desks. But the day in the life for me is really just trying to tie all those pieces together in harmony as best as possible. I see myself as the conductor of an orchestra made up of many talented musicians. And, if anybody's a fan of music, orchestras, regardless, I used to play in a band. If everybody's playing loud all at the same time, it doesn't sound good. And so my job is to kind of regulate the sounds to find that harmony, so that we can harmonize within our department, but our students find that harmony as what is supporting them in the communities they call home. So that's how I see my job playing out in kind of a real world analogy.
And as for me, so I am one of the residence director. I'm like, hey, too early. Don't want to do the math right now. Make sure I count everyone. So I oversee, residence director typically oversee, right, like an area. And so my last 2 years, I oversee Pedro Arrupe, which is one of our continuing residence hall out in the inner Richmond neighborhood. And I also oversee like St. Anne's, which is our like law and graduate students, out in the outer Sunset. And so, normally you see RD either it's like in one building or just a couple of buildings that make up of that area. And so I was, actually, how did I end up here? So this is my, my third year. So I'm also like entry-level staff. And I think that my, kind of like interest in housing dated back to like my graduate school. Because in undergrad, I was a Go team person. Like I was in orientation, never did anything with RA, things like that. But that changed in graduate school. And so, since then I kind of like stayed on. And so for me, but this year, I have was blessed with the privilege to serve as the EHS RD. And so I was serving to support all of our essential housing students, this past year. And typical workday, I think normally there'll be a lot more student interaction and student like face-to-face or just hugging in general, but with COVID this year, our operations have been like so on the remote extreme. And so it has been anything but typical, more of our work are done like online. And so the things that we do are still remain the same in terms of, we still have RAs, even though the number is smaller, just because of the student population is smaller. But all of our kind of like support are more so on like the virtual side of town. And then, right, we still are on call, we still respond to things in person as usual. But typical workday, I think, there's a lot of meetings one-on-one, where that's like with your staff or your team, but also any, RD also do student conduct as well. So meeting with students that way. But then also we oversee a lot of the processes that happen within like the residential education or also in SHARE in general. And so recently, for those who applied for RA position, we have just finished off with our interviews. We have like 100-some candidates who were interested. We're super excited. As we added in Lone Mountain East, the new building, we would have like 1 additional staff, right? So we were able to add like 60 more positions to this whole thing. And so we were really excited to kind of, we just did our placement. Our offer letter is going to go out on the 16th. And so we're really excited to kind of, welcome in new folks and just get started on planning next year. So there's a lot of, the day-to-day, building, is everyone okay? Is the buildings okay? Are the students okay? But also working on extra projects like, some of the bigger processes as well.
Thank you both for really giving us a glimpse into what it's like to be a part of this department, SHARE. I am a senior, and throughout all my years, I've heard SHARE, SHARE, SHARE. So I kind of wanted to give you all some time to tell us what is the true mission of SHARE. We would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, I think the truest mission, the truest expectation we have, not only of ourselves, but the university has of us, both the administration as well as the students who call our places home, is to provide safe and comfortable spaces for growth, right? And if we just condense it down to that, right? Mission statements get long. We actually have a very long mission statement. I can't even honestly say that I remember it. But it's safe and comfortable spaces where people can grow, right? Students spend a majority of their time, if they're living on campus, they spend a majority of their time in their dorm, not in the classroom, not in common area spaces. Yes, majority of that time they're sleeping, but a majority of the time they're spending in their residential space. And so it has to be safe, first and foremost, because if it's not safe, you can't grow. It's got to be comfortable. It doesn't have to be plush. We know most of our spaces aren't plush. Lone Mountain East, as plush, right? So it's nice that we're going to get this building to bring online that will be a showcase for our students, and then hopefully do the things we need to do to draw the rest of our communities to be have spaces like are available in Lone Mountain East. I'm actually meeting with somebody from the Foghorn on Monday to walk them through the new building. By the way, Yuan failed to mention, but she's going to be the RD for the new building next year. She gets to open that beauty up on the hill. So it has to be comfortable. Because that is what allows students to grow, right? So, and that's where the pieces, the harmony comes into play, right? The student housing side, make sure the facilities are taken care of, and stuff breaks, right? We've got old buildings, right? We make sure students are assigned to spaces that are most supportive of their needs. We have customer service desks and safety desks so they feel safe. And then residential education comes in and runs with that. And I'll kind of segue that to Yuan, because that's really the core of what we're supposed to be doing, is growing our students, but they can't get to that unless we can get them safe and comfortable.
So jumping on that train, I think for in the reset side, so things that happen in the halls, right? We know for sure that we have this kind of like 4 pillars that we operate off of. So one, it's life skills, right? Want to make sure that students are not, well, it's a mixture, right? Students on campus where people who have lived in like a community living before, have roommates or not before, right? But then it's not also just about that. It's also about preparing them for life out, after graduation too. And so there's a lot of, by living in the hall, I think you gain a lot of skills in terms of, like knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, knowing other people's boundary, and just kind of like those smaller like lives, not small, they're not small, they're absolutely important things that people should know, right? As so life skills, but then also community involvement. I think that is, a given, right? When you come into the halls, you have the amazing RAs and even, CAs at the front desk too, welcoming and trying to build that community, where that's like on the floor or just like in the whole building in general. And we also have like social responsibility as one of our pillars as well. As right, like USF pride itself of, with their, even from their mission of like change the world from here, it's just like the social justice and just the diversity that drawn a lot of our students onto campus. And so it would not be, right, doing itself justice if that's like not one of our core as well, especially, it's not supposed to be just one office or something on campus that only, do this work. It should be shared amongst like all of the department across campus, right? And so we have, built in those as well, as kind of like our like learning goals. And the last one is academic pursuit, knowing that we can't take academic out of our students. That we, right, like students are here as students first. And so I think overall, if I need to sum, it's just trying to promote that academic pursuits, but also how do we develop students like as a whole as well to become a kind, loving, someone who can live, if it's not in the immediate, right, like roommate, but even if you go out into the society, you're going to be living and working amongst other people. And so how can we help you kind of, use this time as a learning moment so you can be prepared to go out?
So something I'm really curious to know, and I'm sure much of our listeners as well, is what can students expect for this next academic year in terms of student housing? Besides being back in person, of course.
Yeah, that's the $1 billion question right now, right? Obviously the university made that statement. We are going to be back mostly in person. There'll still be opportunities for remote learning for students who need access to remote learning for a variety of reasons. But with that in-person piece comes the engagement of campus and the opening of our residence halls and creating the residential campus nature that we are built upon. USF has always been a residential campus. We are making it more residential with the addition of 600 beds. That actually increases our occupancy by 25%. Our goal for next year is to actually be open as full as possible, with double occupancy. We will not have triple occupancy. Even with the way we're moving in health trends, like there's a lot of indicators that are saying, obviously Governor Newsom came out and said we're going to be fully open in the state of California by June 15th. At this point in time, over 50% of people in San Francisco have had at least their first vaccination. So there's these trend indicators that are saying we're going to be in a much better spot come fall. So, our hope and our goal is to be more open as possible. So hold on, my son's talking to me. Go fill that up in the sink. I'll get some later. I'll get some for you in a minute. That's what working from home is like, folks, with a 4-year-old. Yeah, so getting open and creating spaces where, hey, do you want to talk a little bit about community living? I got to help the kiddo get some water. And then I'll talk about like opening.
Yes, so I think as we have shared as well, we are our staff, RAs, we're already hiring, right? So we're like already working on preparing, having like, if students are coming back, then we also need like a student staff and also, the staff in general to be in the buildings. And so I know that, recently like the university have come out and just shared some of the different modalities of how things going to be in the classroom. And I think that's what, SHARE would have to go through too. And so we are, hopefully in the next couple of months, we wanted to also try to like plan out on what that, what would it look like in terms of having students on campus, but then what would that like interactions or kind of like the community buildings would look like? Because as we have shared, this year has been on the extreme, all things are online, but also know that it was at, one things that we, didn't kind of like in the expense of basically is the students like mental health, right? Like students feel isolated, and that is, the true, things that I've heard. And so hopefully, that's something that we need to take into account as well in terms of next year. If we were to, hopefully, we won't have to like be as extreme anymore, just because, with the cities too, all the guidelines are, becoming more and more people friendly, like group friendly and things like that, right? And so we're still
looser, a little looser.
Yeah, like group friendly. And so hopefully, with that too, we can also adjust our operations that way. But yes.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. And the concept of us hiring a full staff of RAs says we're in this to get students back and give them that engagement experience. Like I said, we're going to be open with doubles. That's our goal. That's what we're moving towards. Now the question is, will guests be allowed? Right? Those are those factors that we're still determining, right? And maybe what happens in the fall might be different in the spring as we even continue in more positive health trends. Will the lounges be open, right? Will students be able to gather in lounges? And students are now, or not students, people in general are now able to gather indoors. And so, as those factors are being, as those restrictions are being lifted or loosened, we feel more and more confident and comfortable that we will probably be able to have the exact same experience in our residential communities. But the big difference is we have a bunch of students living together. And the one thing we've learned about this virus is it transmits via contact, right? So this is what we're balancing, right? This need to have an enriching experience for our students in a residential setting with this virus spreads by people being in contact with each other. And it's often hard not to be in contact with people when you're living in a space with people. And so, that's where the vaccination comes into play, right? And more people are getting vaccinated. We're talking about the access to vaccines for students who don't have access in their current location, but are coming back to campus. And those are the things we're planning and plotting. And, in my head, I'm like, at least it's still the first part of April, so we've got some time. But then in my head, I'm also like, oh my God, it's the first part of April. We got to get some stuff done, right? So we're balancing that. But that's our push, right? That's our push, is to be open and give students that experience that we know they need and they deserve.
I think also, a push for ourselves too, of thinking, we need to, as we do our planning, right? Like ask all of these questions, just put all the questions on the table and trying to find, if not just one plan, but multiple. Because even you have people, let's even say like, oh, we can all come back X, Y, and Z, do all the things that used to be normal, right? Before COVID. But then, we may have folks who like, with the vaccinations, that's also questions on the table as well. Students have to be vaccinated or not. And so there's like that piece too. What if folks are not, like a mixture of things? And even if people who are vaccinated, what if they don't feel comfortable being in a space where there's, let's say like if our spaces have windows and have an airflow, things of that nature too. So it also then pushes us, right, to make sure that we are creating an experience, not just for, the best case scenario, but also like all cases of scenarios of do we need to have multiple approaches for students who, let's say, they weren't comfortable to, come to like a big gathering or something. Like, how can we make sure that we're supporting all those students coming in? Because remember too, everybody are right now, not everyone's at SF, not everybody have understand SF way of COVID. People come from like all across the country, all across the globe. And so different places have different ways of dealing with COVID this past year. And people have built some sort of habits around that too, right? Of like, how do I live in COVID? And so now we're going to bring everyone back to campus, not just about SF COVID guidelines, but also USF, like the academic side of things, but also like the residence hall side of things. And so, we would just ask like everyone, with ourselves too, to kind of, be flexible, but also holding some of these like guidelines. Like holding ourselves accountable to those too, because I think that would help, that would help the community in general as we learn this together.
Thank you both for, sharing all the hard work that goes behind reopening. And I thought it's clearly indicated by all the plans you all are talking about. And I really appreciate you all, thinking about the different, outcomes, like what could potentially happen. And I really do appreciate that. And I believe Tori will be leaving us around this time. But yeah, we do appreciate you for coming on, and it was really nice meeting you and having you on the podcast.
No, I appreciate it. And I think one of the, I kind of see where the question's going, and I had one thought I wanted to share as I walk out of this space. First and foremost, thank you for inviting us into this space. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all and your peers about what's going on and the work that we're doing. But that concept of the experience, right? And we're talking about the opening, but we also need to talk about the experience. And our hope is to make it as normal of an experience as possible, not only for our first year students. This is the other piece for our second year students. They will start going through the process next year. Our class of 2024 that were admitted last year have been online this entire year, that have not had a single Hilltop experience. Those are the students that are going to have priority access to live in the new dorm. They will be, we're going to have a move-in experience for them. We're going to have like an orientation experience for them. So we recognize that, yeah, those freshmen coming in next year, our first year students, need an experience. But we have this class that had no experience whatsoever, and we're taking advantage of opportunities to give them that too. And then our juniors and seniors, we provide housing for juniors and seniors in Loyola Village and Pedro Rupe, and they had their experiences impacted, right? So we have all these students who have gone through this trauma. And so not only are we going to help support that through an experience, but that's also part of our thought and the work that we need to do is how are we trauma informed? How are we going to be able to support students who are coming back expecting normalcy, but that's going to be very different for everybody's thing. And Yuan, I appreciate you saying, because I lose sight of that people are doing COVID differently, everywhere. And people have created their patterns there, right? And now they're going to come back to our community, and we have an expectation. And so some of that's going to be pre-arrival, like letting them know these are our expectations for how you engage in our community from a health and safety standpoint. So yeah, it's the work, but our work is geared towards the experience and supporting our students. But I appreciate the time, and I'm sorry I have to dip out a little bit early, but you don't have anybody better than Yuan in the space to talk through what it's like and what our student experience is like, and because she's darn good at what she does. So I will step away, and thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Take care, Tori. We'll see you in the fall.
It's just 3 of us now.
Hello again.
Wow, that was really nice. I didn't even think, like, as a as a senior, or even in this position, it's really important to think about second years who are first years now. That was something that I completely wasn't even thinking about. Like, it's really important to offer them the same experience, because it is true, everything for them was online this semester. Well, this whole year.
We have a lot of RA candidates too who are like, oh, in their application, in their interview, we're also worried, like, oh, I haven't lived on campus, like, would that be a problem? And we're like, no, no, that's like good. You can take this time too to kind of walk our student through the same thing, right? Like learning together. And so, even that, right? The whole, because we used to have a thing of, if you're an RA, you have to like live on campus before. But this year we kind of also like nicked that off because we wanted to be mindful, right? That, student leadership like positions are important. And so how can we also support these group of students too as they come in?
Mm-hmm. Just the last few questions we have for you, Yuan, is can you tell us a little bit more just about like some of the pros and cons for students that choose to live on campus?
Of course. So I think one of the cons that came to mind immediately is that we have limited space. Like that is just one of the sad truth, right? When we look at I came from a school where we're like 90% residential, but that's because we have like space and, we just have space in general. But, here at SF, right, living in a tight community of San Francisco, we just don't have enough space. And so I think that's something else. We just had our like application process for housing. And so knowing that, right, like not everyone who, like that we just can't house all of our students from first year up until senior. Or even more, even our graduate students too. So I would say that that's like one of our cons, it's not having enough space. But I think that, living on campus is really an experience that, you can get as a student. And so being able to like live in a space where, for sure that when you come back, that there are folks or events, kind of like some sort of like community living and that involvement going on that you wouldn't get, right? Like if you live like off campus, just because, you know, you don't have like that RA or even like the ARD and RD, you know, they're kind of holding those events or just like providing that support. And I think that being able to be in close approximation to, right, campus, to where you're going to classes or just like resources in general, just can't, you know, talk about the RAs like enough. They do amazing work at, you know, one, keeping our community safe, but also being there to support students too, as someone that they can, you know, like kind of go and have conversation with, you know, throughout the day. And even, you know, LCAs working the desk like 24 hours. I feel like sometimes, you know, students have a questions in the middle of the night, you know, instead of like, oh, can I call a landlord if you live off campus? It could be like, oh, I can just like walk downstairs and like ask a couple of questions, you know, with like my peers. And it's not someone, you know, hopefully not someone intimidating as well, just right, like your peers, so having like asking those questions. And I think that one of the things that just have to take in consideration, you know, I think just be frank, as I see some articles on here too, because I have a question someone asked too of, you know, with the rate of the city market for housing is kind of doing pretty well, you know, it's like pretty low, right? How would USF like housing compete with the housing market in San Francisco? And I was like, good question, you know. And I think that, you know, finance is something you can't take out of anything, right? It's like you wanted to make sure that you get, well, one, that you can afford it, also two, that, you know, whatever you spent, that you kind of get an investment out of it too, right? And so I think that is just on an individual basis, right, of what you can pay and what you hope out of it. And obviously I can't guarantee what you would get off campus, but I can guarantee, you know, on campus that you have like people around you, that one, your peers that are going through this together, you know, this experience together, but you also have like student leaders and also staff members who are there to provide that support too, from, you know, your like general like well-being and needs up to helping you like troubleshoot like facilities issues or whatnot. Just because also being mindful, right? Our buildings are also at different stages and ages.
Kind of touching too on your point, Yuan, how you were saying just with the housing market in San Francisco this past year, Macy and I, we actually came across two articles that we'd love to share with all our listeners here. One was taken from the SF Chronicle, and we just thought we'd give the numbers too. And it was published on March 28th. It stated San Francisco median rents are still down 23.2% from the prior year, by far the biggest drop in the country among major US cities, according to Apartment List. And then more than 80,000 households left San Francisco between March and November of last year. We even came across an article on Bloomberg.com this past month, and it states, ironically, it was San Francisco's locally grown tech industry that enabled remote work and the mass departures. And kind of like the last question I have for you is for students, especially me, and I speak on behalf of my incoming seniors, is what are some of the pros and cons of living off campus, and where do you kind of see the whole market going in terms of housing, or just the in these next couple of years for students?
I think that I am glad that now our students have the options, right? I think with this low mark, I think all in all, is that, like I said, we can't, you know, we just don't have space to house all students. And it was, yeah. Also, right, it's like seeing like our students having to make, well, yeah, I think it's always just sad, you know, if it's have to like make decision based off of your ability to like afford things. So there's that, we talk about that later on. But, you know, so now I think I'm glad, you know, when someone, posts that questions or like seeing some of these numbers, I'm like, that's good. You know, that means that our students have more options to kind of pick, because like I've said, you know, we just don't have enough spaces for, you know, to house all folks. And so people who we can't house, like, where can they go? And now seeing that they may have options to do that. I think that some of the pros is that, you know, you're not tied to this physical location, right, of USF. San Francisco, or just the Bay Area, we just have like so many amazing neighborhoods, you know, that make up our city. And so being able to kind of like live among. So I think it's just putting in, that's my areas of Pedro Arrupe in Inner Richmond and also St. Anne's in the Outer Sunset. It's like we're literally like smack in the middle of amazing and really vibrant like communities out there that you're close to, like foods, restaurants, or just like thrift shops, things like that. And so you kind of get a glimpse of, you also won't be living in residence halls forever. And so you kind of get a glimpse, right, too, of like, hey, how does that work, living off campus? Because, being a student living off campus, that's also one good thing, because we have an office called Office for Campus Living, OCL, off-campus living, OCL, where, if students have questions or just like curious about how to even start this process, or even if they already live off campus and wanted some extra resources, OCL is like a really amazing like support that they can go through. And that may not be something you have, right? Like a third party to kind of support you like once you graduate. And so and I think that, some of the pros, maybe you may have the options of like picking who you want to live with, or like how many people you want to live with. And so it's just like trying that. And I think that, if people are like thinking about like on campus or off campus, I would say if you could like try both, because you may not be able to live on campus all 4 years anyway. So there might just need to be a balance of both. Or if you live off campus, we just, still want to welcome you to come back on campus, is to kind of like hang around with your friends as well, right? And so I think that it doesn't have to be like an either or. You can do both, and you can, if you live on campus, you can choose to go off campus and then come back again if you wanted to. Like, at least we know on campus will always be here. Our residence halls will always be here for you if you want to come back. So yeah. It's just fun either way. I feel like there's just, things to think about and experiences that you get that are different from both, but it will all be, good. And the not so good one would just be a learning moment that would be beneficial to you in general.
I definitely agree. It's definitely two completely different experiences living on and off. But I would suggest the same thing. Like if you have the opportunity to do both, then I feel like you get like the best of both worlds, if that makes sense. So yeah, I agree with that. So I think we will be moving on to our Phoenix announcements. So we do like to go over a couple announcements for our students. And Yuan, thank you so much again for offering your time and all of truly your perspective on everything. It's really important to understand where faculty is coming from as well when they come out with plans. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Of course, thank you for having me here.
Yes. So now we're just going to take it away with the announcements. First one is join the Campus Activities Board, also known as CAB, from your kitchen on Thursday, April 15th at 5 p.m. with famous chef Sola. Sign up Tuesday at noon to be emailed a low-cost ingredient list so you can cook along. If you aren't the best cook, you can still register through Thursday and tune in for the lesson and a live Q&A. And before you dig in, send CAB a pic of your plate presentation for a chance to win a Mercado pasta maker, Shun Chef knife, or a large Dutch oven. My bad.
That's funny. I love that though. A pasta maker. That's crazy. Oh, that sounds like fun. All right. Need to know who is running for what? Check out Dawn's elections to see who is running to present you. Then meet the candidates at a fun Zoom game night hosted by ASUSF Senate on Wednesday, April 14th at 5 p.m.
Environmental Career Week will be going on until this Thursday, April 15th, hosted by Career Services. This week is all about connecting students with employers hiring for sustainability and environmental roles and alums who are working in these fields. Sign up through Handshake.
And before we close off with, our quote of the day, I want to give an opportunity for Yuan to share your socials. Where can our students find you?
Yes, thank you, y'all. So we have revised our Instagram this year. So if you are on Instagram, please go follow us at USFCA SHARE. So at USFCA SHARE. We'll have, some fun like giveaways and stuff, as the rest of the semester too, wanted to kind of get students, not just those who are living currently on campus, but just, USF students in general. So follow us and we'll, promise we'll keep this going for next year as well.
Awesome. And that is so true. I'm so glad to see that, the Share IG is really popping off. I love to see posts. So yeah, we'll make sure to put that in the bio down below and also include that in the video so that everyone can go follow. So the quote that we have for today is related to community, just because we know community is very important in any scenario, but especially in the Share department and the community that they're trying to build at USF. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. And this quote is coming from Margaret J. Wheatley. And I'm very glad that, I'm a part of the USF community and that we're all really striving for, social change. So yeah, that's been all for today.
Thank you all. And this has been Activity Time.
Woo, woo.